Welcome to Beyond the Corporate Ladder, thoughtful conversations on leadership, growth, and long-term perspective with your host, Stephen Lee Thomas. Each episode features thoughtful conversations with leaders and operators about growth, decision-making, and what it really looks like to build a meaningful life as your career evolves. Welcome back, everyone, to Beyond the Corporate Ladder. Today, my guest is John Todderud, and he just got back from a very long vacation. We were talking about that before the show. The lifestyle he's built for himself allows him to do that. So I'm excited to learn more. John, thanks so much for joining today. How you doing?
Thanks, Stephen, as well. I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm doing great, and glad to be back at work and doing the things that I really enjoy, and glad to share a few things with you today.
Awesome. John, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you're currently doing?
Certainly, I am a real estate investor. I've been buying real estate for a number of years, about 15 years, and transitioned out of my W-2 job. I was in tech, and I'll go into that a little bit with you, and and am spending my time working with other real estate investors, finding opportunities for um, investing myself and helping other people invest as well. And love every aspect of it. Love the people I meet, and I'm so thoroughly glad that I was able to make this journey into real
And
estate.
so you're full-time investor now, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, well, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your early career. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lead that up to how does somebody get from where they're at to, maybe living the lifestyle where they're just a full-time investor, whether that's passive or active, but that's a big change. That's a big transition. So let's go back earlier in your career. Where did you start and start working us through that journey?
Certainly okay. I started in software engineering and was an engineer for a large company for a while. Decided that instead of having a small piece on a large project, I wanted a bigger piece, maybe on a smaller project, and so I left that after a few years earlier on and had a software engineering role in another company, and we were bought out by a bigger company, and they had us for a little while, and I learned the business. I was very deep into this particular business space and understood the technology, understood the business and the people, and liked working in that area. And the company that bought us let us go, let us all go at once, and so we were all out on the street. And so I took
Oh
that
man.
opportunity to start my own software business and sat down for a few months and wrote a new software product for this particular industry and went to people that I knew, and they were in need of a new product, and they became my first customers, and I built a business around it. And I had that business, and for about 10 years or so, I was doing everything customer support and the engineering, the development of the product, and eventually hired people. You know, you kind of transition in a business like this to hire people to do these things, and along the way, I had intentionally transitioned out of the engineering role. And as anybody in technology knows, you step away for a little while, and that the state of technology just moves right past you. And that's what happened to me. And I was kind of in a manager role instead of doing the engineering, and I was not an engineer anymore, and would not have been able to keep pace with where the technology was going. And so after that period of time, I sold the business, and I wanted to stay in the technology, and so I found a role as a development manager. I found another role after that as a IT consultant, and each of these lasted a few years. And along the lines, and this was about 15 years ago, I had made a decision that I wanted to do more. I wanted other ways of building my own personal wealth for me and my family,
Hmm.
and discovered. I mean, is an unfortunate realization that any of us in the corporate world have is that our jobs are really not secure as much as we'd like to think they are. They are not. And I have deliberately chosen roles in consulting, and consulting is short-term engagements, and maybe they're a few months or a year or two, but they're not very long. So I kind of got used to that. And it's easy sometimes to find your next one and difficult sometimes to find another gig after that. And so I wanted to back up. The side hustle, so to speak, wasn't a term back then, but this is 15 years ago, and I started buying real estate. And I had a job, good paying job, and that was supporting me, but I wanted to make the transition. Started small, 3 unit and a 4 unit, and owned them and operated them. Found the renters, wrote the lease, learned the local laws, and found people to repair things at the units, and I was off to the races. And I owned them, had all the typical problems that you face, and
Mhm.
I started meeting people, and I found resources to say, hey, what do you do in this circumstance, that circumstance, all this, like building a good foundation of real estate knowledge earlier on, and still having a job doing it, and getting calls in the middle of the day when I had a job, and all this stuff. And even had a fire at a unit a half an hour down the road, and I had to leave my job and take a look at it. It was not that severe, fortunately, but you have to deal with these things. And then grew from there. I mean, I started going to multifamily conferences, which I strongly recommend. And there's a bunch of good ones out there, and met people, learned things, and then learned about syndicating. It's a big bad word, but it's really not a bad word. It's just pulling people in together, and a group of you buying a property as a group, and how to do that, how to stay within the law, how to like be able to present an opportunity for other investors. And that's effectively what I've been doing since then. I have properties that I've syndicated. I have properties on my own still, and I'm heavily involved in operations in some, and less involved in others. And so that's what I still do today. Uh, um,
Awesome. I appreciate you walking us through that. I think there's a lot of as you're explaining that, I'm like nodding my head. Yep, I can
yeah,
relate to that. I can relate
right.
to that.
Yes.
There's one thing you mentioned that I think it is important, and that is as a W-2 earner, I think there's this false sense of security in more so in today's world than, a few decades ago. And one of the things I remember that just stood out to me was thinking when I was working for a very successful large corporation, hey, I'm golden. And then we started doing mergers and acquisitions, and it's like, we're getting rid of that group of people. We're getting rid of that group of people. And I was like, wait, that's a good person. Why did that person go? And then I was like, ooh, there's got to be like, is there a target on my back? I don't know. And that was for me like a big fire to like, I need to figure something out here. So, there is not nearly what people think as a job security. There's kind of like this romantic idea of I'm going to go to school, get a job, get this good career. And I'm like, good at that point. And then you learn some of these things along the way. So, um, when you take a look at where you're at today and how everything's unfolded, what do you think's contributed the most? Like, if there's one thing you think has contributed the most to where you're at today, what is that?
There's a term. It's just I call it hanging on. You can't be too aggressive about needing immediate short-term results. Real estate is a long game, and the best outcomes I've had are when I did what really needed to be done, knowing that I was going to hold a property for a little while longer, and had it turn out really well. Um, where you turn the corner, you get past the immediate problems. You didn't panic and and try to unload the property in a hurry
Hmm.
or things like that. You're holding on, you're doing what you know to be the right thing to do. And sometimes it's digging a little deeper into your own pocket or investing in some capital improvements or repairs or things like that that really needed to be done and not trying to just um, um, cover it up and hand it off to the next owner or those kinds of things. Those are invariably going to work out well for you. You choose the right path, and you'll get paid for it. You'll find a buyer who knows that your property is in good shape and will pay you the right price for it. And, under all the right circumstances, of course. The market's got to be right. But that's one of the biggest factors for me is I've I've held out on selling in order to finish some capital improvements. And then the sale process worked out really well. There's a lot of growth in equity. That's really where the wealth comes from is appreciating a property. The cash flow is nice, and I can appreciate it even more now. I've been out of my W-2 job for a few years, and I look for cash flow. I get cash flow, and I like it. But the appreciation is really where the growth and the wealth comes from.
So I want to what you just mentioned right now. You left your corporate job a few years ago. You're just doing this full time. Um, you also mentioned that there was a period of time, about 10 years, where you were a solopreneur. I think is the way you described it, and you were all things to everyone, and you were probably extremely busy versus you just got back from what, a 3 or 4 week vacation, something like that.
Right?
So what does balance, like that, the balance look like for you now that you've gone through this and the stage that you're at?
Well, yeah, it's nice to be able to travel and have freedom to do whatever you prefer to do. Not only the financial resources, but the time to do it, and without a lot of other commitments. I would say that the path that I've chosen in real estate, it's not. It's not 100% carefree. Wake
Hmm.
up and just watch TV all day. There's there's a lot of work still involved in it. My time is less than full time. I mean, in real estate now, I'm not a 40-hour week or probably not even a 20-hour week person. I have a lot of other personal activities that I'm involved in. That's one side of it. The other side is that a lot of the work that I do can be set aside. It's building things for the future. And if I want to take a trip somewhere and I don't
Hmm.
have a whole lot of time, if I'm someplace where I can't spend a lot of time during the day doing work, then I don't. I'm going to structure it so that I don't have to. I mean, these are not daily commitments that I have that you have in a regular W-2 job. You have to be somewhere. You're showing up for work or working from home. You have daily commitments, and
Right.
that's the life I've lived for a while. But real estate, where I am now, I don't have those. But it didn't come right away. I built up to this point.
So you used the term earlier, it's what you call hanging on. I think I've also heard it called grit. It's like that, being tenacious and sticking with something long enough.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's one of the things that I've really learned, through corporate life, through real estate, through building a business. It's it's that ability to like hang on long enough and get there, and that grit. And so you mentioned syndications, and you are doing a lot of the work. People could invest passively though, right, as well, and not have to do the work in a syndication structure.
Correct. The passive investment is a great opportunity, especially if you don't feel like it's something you want to do at least
Hmm.
this at this point in your life, uh, to be on a management team, to be helping guide the renovations of a property, to make decisions about capital improvements and making sell or refi decisions or signing on a loan or those kinds of things. There's a lot of jobs and tasks, investor relations and everything. There's a lot of tasks around actual management
Hmm.
of a property, and it goes on for several years. And you're in bed, you're married, you are tied at the hip with your general partners, and you got to be comfortable that you can do that for 5 years. Maybe less, maybe more. Doesn't always that's not always the case. And if you're a general partner, you have an expectation that your returns for your time and your investment are going to be higher than if you were a passive investor. That's reasonable because you're working harder at it. If you're a passive investor, you still have great returns and
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
tax benefits. You have the cash flow, you have the depreciation write-offs, and you get appreciation on the property. Still great opportunities as a passive investor, but you don't have those headaches.
Yeah. So when I started, um, I was very busy with my corporate career. We were rapidly climbing the Fortune 500 list. We had bought a almost 100-year-old house that had
Ah,
renters in it for like 15 years that needed renovations, and so we were in the process of flipping that and trying to live in at the same time. My son was like 2.5, 3, and then my wife was pregnant, and I just did not have time to be active in real estate, but love the idea. And that's when I got introduced to the passive investing. And that's when I was getting mailbox money while changing diapers. That's how I like to
uh-huh.
frame it. So there's
Yeah.
always like the huge benefits of investing in real estate, but working with people like you who are experienced, who can do that heavy lifting, while I get to take advantages of this wealth growth vehicle. So I think that's an awesome perspective there, and you have been able to straddle, really both sides of that. So where you're at now, 5 to 10 years from now, um, what feels like the most important thing for you to focus on?
Well, I'm less my future real estate projects uh, will be done together with other experienced operators, and I have a number of them in my network, and I like working with them, and I'll be joining together um, with them to acquire larger properties. And a lot of these operators, most of them probably have good systems and processes in place and even vertical integration on the property manager,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
means that the property managers work directly for them. They're not necessarily contracted party property managers. That provides you a benefit in two ways. One is that it's much more controlled by you. Yeah, you can track your timing metrics, your turn times and repair costs and everything like that a lot better. You have a lot better control over that. And the second thing is that you are not beholden to them. They are not it's much more cost effective to have your own people working for that. They're not taking the property management fee. But you have to have a critical mass. You have to know what you're doing in order to do that. And so those are the people that I'm working with. And part of that transition, or a big part, I should say, is that my involvement in the day-to-day operations will not be what it is today. That's what I'll continue doing as, as long as I'm able to. And creating opportunities for people to join me, knowing that their uh, their investment is being well taken care of.
So what I hear you saying is continuing to align yourself with people that you can learn from their experience, and implement some of those processes yourself, ultimately creating better outcomes for you and your investors.
Well, I'm always learning. I would not say that I'll ever stop that. I guess what I was saying is that my investments will be together with these other syndicators, and my involvement long term with my investments will be uh, and monitoring them and influencing the management to some degree, but not to the degree that it is today. I won't
Gotcha.
be. I don't see myself staying on in property manager calls with them, like the weekly or biweekly property manager calls,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is required by a management team. I don't see myself uh, doing the accounting for property, but I surely need to know that these tasks and operations are in place and that they're functioning well and that they're tried and tested. And so looking at their background, I mean, anybody that I work with, I certainly am going to vet them, knowing that they've
Right,
done a
right,
number of
right.
deals, full cycle deals, and so forth.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Um, so, in the spirit of helping other people be successful, someone who's a little bit earlier in their career, maybe they're you and they're an IT engineer, maybe they're in the corporate rat race. So maybe I shouldn't call it that, but they're in their corporate career. Maybe they're contemplating starting their own business or something. Someone who's on a similar path, what's something you wish you understood sooner that would have helped you get to where you're at today?
Uh, I think a big piece of it of what I learned along the line that I wish I knew earlier was time management. I've had a lot of training and experience from various consulting roles and done all this stuff, but I just really wasn't handling it well myself. And it's partly like you have a W-2 job and you say, hey, I want to buy real estate and and all the choices and decisions and tasks you have to have along the line, all the learning tasks and all those things take time. And where are you going to find that time? How are you going to carve it out of your day? Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Do you have little kids? Are you going to put them to bed earlier and then have time to do that afterwards? Can you get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and do an hour or two of work? All those things. Do you have some time over the weekend? Where are you going to carve that time? You've got to be deliberate and proactive about that and figure that out, especially if you're like out buying training or something. You're making an investment. Oh, I spent a few $1,000s on this. That'll get my mind focused and surely I'll find the time then. No, that's not the case. You need to find the time first. And so it's finding the time. And whether I had small properties or large properties, that was always the case. And and so um, understanding and getting a handle on your time management, finding books on how to do that. And there's a bunch of good ones out there, and that's one of your first steps. You have to be no matter what your vocation is, uh, your family structure, whatever. Um, I would say everybody can find the time. So I'm so busy. Well, we're all busy. You can find the time, structure it better, and you got to figure that part out.
Yeah, I love that. I there was a period where I went through business coaching, and that was one of the core topics was actually time management,
Hmm.
protecting your time, structuring your time.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of you could be very busy thinking you're productive, but when you take a step back, it's busy work and it's not really moving you forward.
Hmm.
And I learned that, I learned some strategies to protect my time and focus on the things that are important, moving things forward. So I think that's very insightful. We all have 24 hours in a day, right? Why is it some people get so much done and others are like, oh, I'm so busy, but I don't get anything done? I think
Yeah.
it's exactly what you nailed right there is the time
Yeah.
management part. So, hey, John, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today. I love the perspectives that you shared. Somebody listening, they'd like to get a hold of you, connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
There's a couple different ways. You can go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, cardinaloak.com. You can also email me directly. I respond to emails, and my email is johnjohn at cardinaloak, cardinaloak.com.
John, thanks so much for being with us today and everybody for tuning in. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been fun.
Thanks for spending time with me today on Beyond the Corporate Ladder. If this conversation resonated with you and you feel like you have a perspective that could add value for others, you can learn more about being a guest at beyondthecorporateladder.com. Thanks so much for listening.